I like that title. I did not, we're live. I did not originate that. That is something that I got from, my goodness, where was that? Reading some of the Hindu scripture, I believe. Being independent of the good opinion of others. So we're going to talk about that here today. Welcome everyone to our Success Mastermind. It's Monday, the 27th of June. Good to see you all. Good to see you. Today, being Monday, we have our book study group. And tonight we're going to be covering the, let's see, what are we covering here? You Were Born Rich by Mr. Proctor, Dr. Proctor. He's not a doctor, but if he was a doctor, he'd be Dr. Proctor. Anyway, the late Bob Proctor's fantastic book, You Were Born Rich. Yes. And then we're going to be covering The Risk Takers, Chapter 7, and The Razor's Edge, Chapter 8. So be sure to have those two read by 9 p.m. Eastern tonight. Next week, we'll be wrapping up with the final two chapters. Okay, so get excited, invite some friends. They can go to jlsuccessmastermind.com/books. Did I say that too fast? J like John, L like Lavenia, successmastermind.com/books, plural, because we've read multiple books and we will continue to do so. Good to see you all. I see some latecomers here. Glad you're here. Welcome. So today we're going to take up the idea that Lynn just introduced to me or just reminded me of, which is that other people's opinions of you are none of your business. Isn't that great? Okay, good. So one of the 6 ghosts of fear, for anyone who's read Think and Grow Rich, which hopefully you all have multiple times, but the final chapter, the epilogue, the 6 ghosts of fear. Okay, number 2 is fear of criticism. Now, one of the other books that we've recently covered was Andy Andrews' Traveler's Gift. I know for some of you, you participated in that, and that was your first time through any of Andy's work. And he talks about some of these decisions. In that case, the book was about the 7 decisions that successful people make. And of course, the traveler went through time and got to meet various personalities who demonstrated and explained, the virtue, the principle that they were, based on, that their success was based on. Anyway, fun story, good read, I think. And one of the things that Andy talked about in that book, and that he also talked about live in the events that I've done with him, is the idea that people don't commit to some course of action, an opportunity, some life improvement thing, some self-determined, let's say that, some self-determined decision that they could make, that they don't commit to it because of fear of criticism. And interestingly, it's, one of the top 3 out of the 6 in Napoleon Hill's book, The 6 Ghosts of Fear, fear of criticism. So what is this? What is this about? We've taken this up before in various capacities where we've acknowledged that, as social creatures, right, we have, we value things like validation and agreement and some, some degree of interaction. None of us are just living in a cave. And, in fact, you can't, if you've got goals, you can't reach those goals just sitting in a cave. I suppose, you could get pretty lofty on, meditative, considerations and, to some degree of spiritual awakening or something, sitting there and being quiet. And I've done that. I do that often, sit there and be quiet. But the action happens in the field. The work occurs in the field, right? So, in fact, I remember talking to someone who was behind enemy lines, let's say. Okay, so behind enemy lines in terms of the environment that they were in. They were in a jurisdiction, geographically and politically, right? A jurisdiction that was hostile to their purposes. And they felt like that's where they needed to do the work, was behind enemy lines. That's where and we have people right now, we have people who are experiencing that depending on, your purposes or leanings or whatever, you may find yourself in an environment, perhaps that you were born into, okay, but that you would choose to not leave due to the fact that your work happens where it's needed, behind enemy lines, so to speak. All right. But if you're out of the cave and you're in the environment, in the field where the work needs to happen, are you also going to, just have constant agreement and like everything's a bowl of cherries? Now we all know the answer is no. Okay, so we're going to have to confront that we're going to be, the fact that we're going to be immersed in a society of various, thoughts, ideas, actions, inactions, right? Some of which may not seem congruent, and some clearly are not congruent with things that we consider good, right, virtuous, purposeful, okay? And yet there's a lot of agreement on both sides of that conversation. So back to Lynn, back to your idea that you reminded me of, which I really appreciate, that other people's opinions are not your business. Who was it? I'm sure Missy knows. I think it was, I don't know, I remember who it was. The name Elizabeth is coming to mind, who said, no one can hurt your self-esteem without your permission. Who was it that said that? Something like that. I'm screwing up the quote here. Okay, but I think it was a first lady of the United States. I don't recall. The name Elizabeth's coming to mind.
Eleanor Roosevelt?
That's exactly right. Eleanor Roosevelt. That's what I said. Right. Eleanor Roosevelt. Okay, so with that in mind, can we put ourselves on the field and at the same time remain independent of the good opinion of others? Well, not only can we, but we kind of have to. We have to. All right. Just this weekend, I sent, in fact, to Missy, who just reminded me who said that, but I sent her a little clipping. I was on YouTube, and there was an advertisement that came up about a coffee mug. It had, as I recall, Cat in the Hat, and it had a little poem about, let's go Brandon and all this, right? And so I thought that was fun and interesting how they were impinging upon the viewer, okay, to go ahead and make an impulse buy. In this case, give me $20 and you get the cup. I've got too many coffee cups already, thanks to my wife and daughter, so I wasn't a buyer. But they impinged upon my attention. They got me to look. I clicked through to see, how they crafted the offer, because I'm interested in marketing. Okay, but here's the question: Are they? They're putting that information, that advertisement, that promotion, they're putting it in front of people who they think would agree and perhaps transact. Okay, so they're promoting. That's important. Are they also, or let me ask it this way, are they only promoting to their ideal target audience? Is there a way to filter it? Now, using technology, we can do stuff that's more effective and not just thrust our message onto people who will never agree. Okay, and people whose opinions are so fixated that they can't be in the conversation. Okay, no, it's not 100%. So I'm sure anyone who's making themselves known in the marketplace to a greater extent, right, is also going to get what? The haters, the critics, right? And isn't that one of the things that, according to Napoleon Hill, and according to people who've studied human psychology and tendencies, isn't that one of the things that we like to avoid? Criticism. It is. So here's where I want to go with this today, because I've experienced this plenty of times myself. What if I put out the marketing message or the content or the post to social media or whatever, and what if I offend somebody? Anybody experience that? Especially in the age of, snowflake culture and everything else, somebody's going to be offended. Okay, so if we know that that's the tendency for people to, there's one of my dogs, right? You see him? Did you see it? That was Jag. He's scared of everything. You guys don't get to see Jag too often. We've had him about a year now. He goes and hides in the corner. when mommy's not home. When mommy's home, he's like Velcro, like everywhere she goes, he's right there. So if we're going to, what I was thinking is, if we're going to expand our reach, if we're going to make our products and services known and make ourselves known to more people in the marketplace, some of that messaging is going to go behind enemy lines, so to speak. Okay. Will you have critics? Yes, you will. Yes, you will. There's a saying from Solomon, Proverbs, as I recall, where there are no oxen, the crib is clean. The crib, the stable, where there are no oxen, the crib is clean. But where oxen are, I don't know, I guess you get shit on the ground or something, right? So the idea is that this is very spiritual, Missy, very spiritual. So the idea is that we could do nothing. In fact, Albert Hubbard said, in order to avoid criticism, do nothing, say nothing, be nothing. How's that sound? Does that sound like a method anyone wants to apply? Well, it's one that many people do apply. And in fact, isn't it the case, can you observe, where authority or agreement or consensus from the powers that be, I know I'm being very vague, okay, but isn't it designed to keep you in line? Think of our modern, past 100 years, modern education system. What did that evolve from? That's some good conformity right there, huh? Right. So here's you children, right? You do as you're told, and you do that, and you don't collaborate. That's called cheating, okay? And you stay in line. This isn't an argument against discipline. This is an argument for self-determinism. So if we've been, and I think all of us have, been born into modern times. Is anyone here who's not in modern times? Lindsay, were you born in the 1700s? At least as Lindsay? No, not this time around. Okay, got it. So we're all into modern times here, right? And so we've all directly or indirectly experienced the product of conformity culture. It was Rollo May who said, in our modern society, the opposite of courage is not cowardice, it is conformity. Wow, I'm full of quotes here today. What do we got to do? We got to leave the herd. So back to what Lynn was saying, your opinion of me is any of my business. Now, you may want to tell me, you may want to thrust upon me your opinion and make known what you think of me. Give me a piece of your mind. I expect that from people who have nothing but criticism. And this is a good argument too for having, communication barriers set up, right? I'm not saying live in a bubble, but I am saying that, if you're expanding, let's say your business, okay, you're expanding your business, certainly, you need to have machinery to get in, here's the email inquiry, and here's the, whatever the social media promotions and stuff are going on. People customers are good for business, right? So you need that incoming communication. And if you're doing marketing, if you're outflowing promotion, you're going to inflow communication. Okay. But is there not also a way to filter? Think of it like this, back to the be, do, and have principle, right? Let's say that you are the person who's going to be running this huge enterprise. Well, if you're being that now, what decisions would that person make to set themselves up for success so they can have the results that you're postulating? Okay. Well, I would have in place, and if not now in this exact moment, I shall have in place my gatekeepers. Here's my communication staff. Okay. I deal with gatekeepers all the time. Right. So one of the businesses that I'm promoting, I've got an offer that I would like to get in front of other people who could promote to a larger audience. And so I'm impinging upon them with an offer for sponsorship and advertising and stuff like that. And a lot of it falls on deaf ears. Now, that could be because I'm just not communicating well enough to hit that target. Here's the person who already has what they think they know and is succeeding at whatever level they're succeeding. Okay. And they probably get bombarded with communications like mine. And since everything equals everything, I'm just part of everything and it's all to be ignored. That's a reality, right? That happens, right? And that's one way to handle communication. Sometimes I'll get a response from the agent, the assistant of, right? So at least I know, the communication is landing somewhere. It's getting inboxed. Okay, so that's nice. And then we get to Q&A a bit and perhaps set an appointment to talk with the decision maker, stuff like that. This is nothing different than anybody else in sales would have to do, right? I mean, unless Mr. and Mrs. Customer themselves are walking into the door, there's typically going to be some intermediaries if you're dealing with business groups and boards and nonprofit organizations and whatever. And then once I can actually get in communication with someone who can make a decision, then I'm in my zone of genius. Then I can go ahead and create an actual dialogue. Okay. But back to the idea of other people's opinions of you. Are they founded in fact? In other words, are they walking around in your head? Or are a lot of people really, how can I say this without sounding overtly critical? I think a lot of people are kind of fixated on themselves. Like if we allow other people to rent space in our head or take up space in our head rent free, right? We are actually giving away a lot of power and not getting any recompense. So if a person is critical, they are doing what? They're revealing themselves as someone who needs to be critical because of you or because of them. We've covered this before briefly, but in our minds and the way that we perceive things, we've got a bit of a dichotomy going on. We've got like a performer, a doer, an action taker, and then we've got the critic, we could say the cynic, the pessimist, and of course the one we feed, the one we validate, is the one that expands. Okay. But oscillating back and forth, like Bob Proctor was talking about in his book that we're reading right now, oscillating back and forth between, ideas of prosperity and advancement and increase, and then ideas of doubt and lack and limitation, will check our progress to the point where we could actually seem like we're working really hard, but not be actually advancing. One step forward, two steps back. So what must we do? Well, back to Napoleon Hill. He said one of the four things that are required for you to develop persistence, number 3 in his list, was a mind closed tightly against all negative influences, including those of your ignorant but well-meaning friends, family, and neighbors, and whatever. He didn't say it exactly that way, but that's what I'm saying. In other words, being independent of the good opinion of others. If we know we're on the right track, if we know that we are on purpose and doing that which we've been divinely guided to do, let me put it that way. Well, then, do we need to look sideways, or what do you think? No. Now, we may seek counsel. Hey, can you give me some instruction on this? How did this work for you? But these are people who are sympathetic with our purposes. And from a person like that, I'll take criticism all day long. Right? Hey, Mandy, I'm going down this road, and I know you've got more experience than me with this. Here's what I'm looking to accomplish, and she says, oh, there's an error. Well, thank you. That's not something I take personally. Save me some time, damn it. Right? So show me how I'm wrong. That's very different than the critics of life who know not what drives you. So interestingly, though, we've seen countless stories, have we not? Countless stories of people who went up against the system, bucked the odds and whatever. I think we mentioned Harlan Sanders the other day, Colonel Sanders, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Nobody wanted the chicken deal until some guy in Salt Lake City bought it. Bam, KFC. It's all over the world now. Okay. Andy Andrews, who I mentioned before, his book, The Traveler's Gift, which I thought it was great. Nobody wanted to publish it. like all these publishers. No, 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 no. Right. And now enormous bestseller. And he's written, I think, 4 other books since then. Can we be independent of the good opinion of others? How do we need to do that? All right. So I'm already 20 minutes into this talk here. So how do we do that? Well, one thing we've got to be able to do, I think, is, as I already mentioned, and hopefully you got it, we've got to have a purpose big enough to commit ourselves to. In other words, the purpose has to be bigger than the criticism or the lack of agreement that we'll get from the uninitiated. Let's just leave it kind of neutral, from the ignorant bystanders. Okay. Even if the people we're intending to serve are currently ignorant bystanders. You think about people who go in, and this may not be a good example, but people who go into, let's say, a native, situation, people are dying of dysentery and filthy conditions, and they go in as missionaries and whatever, and they set up, clean water, or, maybe they're also bringing, education, right? Here's the books, right? You can read, and here's mathematics and all this. And this happened, and it does happen to some degree today. There's still like, primitive cultures and stuff, but this happened a lot more in yesteryear, where here's the society disorderly and whatever that can now advance and get more civilized, because people care enough to impinge upon it, and where they met with open arms. Oh my goodness, yes, clean water. We haven't had clean water, and shoes and stuff. I remember when I went to Fiji. Has anyone here been to Fiji? So in Fiji, yes, Lynn. Well, you're right down the street, right? Fiji is right there. So in Fiji, which used to be known as the Cannibal Islands, interesting story. We were driving around towards this. We were headed to this village, like a native Fijian village, okay, where they still live in huts and stuff, okay. And I asked the tour guy. We had a little bus. It was like a VIP excursion for the leadership of this company I was doing marketing with, and I noticed that every village we went by, going down the road, there was these split rail fences, like a log, and then 2 logs going across. But on top of each post was a white rock, like a rock painted white. And after a while of seeing white rocks on top of every post, I asked the guy, what's with the white rocks? He said, well, this used to be the Cannibal Islands, a few years ago, and those used to be skulls. And that was to show, here's what happens to intruders, in our village, right? See the skull, right? So, but it wasn't good for tourism. So white rocks. Anyway, we got to the village, and they did the ceremonial stuff, and there's chickens running around, and we're eating the breadfruit. I don't know if you guys know what breadfruit is. I've never seen it here in the States, but it's like this big orb. It grows on a tree, and it eats like bread. Like you break it off, and it's like bread. It's interesting, big like that, and so at the end of it, we befriended one of the village people, not the band, okay, not okay, one of the village people, who also gave us the raft tour, where they had the sticks bound together, and we got to ride the raft, and we jumped off the waterfall into the pool. So we had the whole experience. And this guy, we offered him, one of my business partners offered him, hey, you want to ride back in the bus to the resort where we're having the a big conference, right? We're having a big meeting, hundreds of people and everything. And so he wound up getting on the bus with us, and he had never worn shoes in his life. So we get back to the resort. That night was the formal gala, however you say it, right? The black tie and the evening gowns and all this. And so we got the guy some clothes, and he had never had shoes on his feet. And he slept over that night on the floor, because it's all he knows. And then we got him back to his version of civilization the next day. But it was a amazing experience. I know I'm on a tangent now, okay, but it was an amazing experience, which we could all have opinions about. One of the things that I noticed coming back from that event, or even at that event while I was mingling with, the natives and all this, was how happy they were. For me, that was how I perceived it. That was real for me. They didn't have what we would consider, civilized, stuff and money and all that, right? They had freaking chickens and breadfruit and papaya, right? They call it pawpaw, right? Growing like weeds. And that's their life, man. There's the stream, jump off the waterfall. They were happy. Okay. I came back to civilization and it was culture shock, right? So this isn't a conversation about good or bad, right or wrong. But if I was critical, let's say here's John, who already knows everything, and here I am, walking through the dirt with chicken shit and children playing with rocks and sticks, right? And if I was like, can you believe this? Granted, if it was like still a cannibal thing, then I would have an opinion about it. Okay, but in this case, I had no opinion about it other than, wow, I'm going to check out the culture. They're not here to eat me, so that's cool. And so we got to have the experience, but there was nothing critical in my heart about that. Likewise, right? These people choose to live the way they choose to live, and we had a visitor come and see what our world looked like. Interesting. This is all on one island, right? Complete dichotomy. So if people who are that far apart, and maybe that's the answer, we're that far apart, we have two different realities. Therefore, we don't even have like a qualified opinion about it, right? Do your thing, I'll do my thing. That's cool. But if that can be harmonious, then perhaps the half knowingness, the half ignorance, where it almost meshes up, right? We know enough to be critical of it, but we don't know enough to be not critical of it and to learn something. Perhaps there is the thing where people are close enough, but far enough as well. Does that make sense? Let me close with this one idea, because we are going to continue to be social creatures. We are going to continue to have interactions with others. We're not going to go sit in the cave. Well, Janet might. Okay, but we're not going to go. I'm messing with you, Janet. All right. So since that's going to continue to occur, since we're going to continue to interact with other people, whether they're allies or foes or critics or, supportive, mentors or whatever, since that's going to happen, and since we would like to go faster in our own personal development with creating our businesses and all this, and we're going to, seek advice and whatever, there's three different kinds of advice. Here's what I want to leave you with. There's three different kinds of advice that you could take. Okay. The first kind of advice is critical advice. That is of the person who knows what the topic is, let's say, but doesn't know anything about it to the point where they have anything quality to share. They have typically failed at that topic. What's an example of that? Okay, home business. All right, so we've got people engaged in a home business, and here's the person who tried for a week once, maybe home business, and therefore all home businesses are like the experience that they had where they didn't even apply themselves. Therefore, everything's a problem, nothing works. So that's advice from the critic. Don't follow it. Second kind of advice is from people with an academic knowledge of something. So they've read the books from the other guy who probably read the book from the other guy. So third party academic, and technically they can cite the theory on how, that is supposed to work. They've got academic knowledge of something. That's the second kind of advice that you could take. Don't. Okay. The third kind of advice, and the only kind of advice you should take, I think, is advice from someone who knows enough about the subject of interest, whatever it is you're looking to get advice on, knows about it to the point where they've actually succeeded with it. Now we've got something worth listening to. And when let's say, for example, I'm doing a webinar, I'm going to pitch an idea. Okay. I must, for me to have integrity and to be someone who's even worth listening to, right? I must briefly state, here's my credentials, here's my experience. Okay. Yes, I've succeeded. Yes, I've actually put this stuff to use. So I'm not just giving you theory. And now let me show you what I found. Here's what works. And in that case, people who have ears to hear will hear. Critics, they're not going to hear anything. Okay. Academics, they may or may not convert. But people who are about actually fulfilling a purpose, and we're in resonance with that, like yeah, it sounds like good stuff. Let's do that. Sold. Finally, I found somebody who could actually, do this and put it to use. Hey, save me some time. Save me some time. Thank you very much. So when you're going into an environment in which you don't get 100% agreement, right? Not only does that give you survey data, right? You can hear briefly, what the retort is from the critics, but you can also identify people who can convert to your purposes, your methods, and whatever it is you're promulgating. But you could do that with a little bit of altitude. All right. So the answer here is altitude. If you think about like different levels of, water, let's say, right? If you're swimming around on the surface, right, and there's people who want the air because they want to get to the surface, and they're just right down here. And then there's, the critics, the bottom feeders. It's kind of interesting how that works, huh? And then there's the bottom feeders down there. They can't even see the surface, right? They're in the dark depths of whatever, right? The people you're looking for, you've got a little bit of altitude there. And you can help those come up. And again, find a way to insulate yourself. Don't sink down to the dark depths, right? Find distance there to insulate yourself from those which will never convert. And no matter what you say, you're wrong. Interesting metaphor, huh? The water thing. It just reminded me of, and then I will shut up. It just reminded me of audio production, which is something I do have experience with. A lot of you guys know I've been in bands and everything else. But what's the number one enemy of quality audio? Distance. Let me demonstrate that. How does that sound? Pretty good? Yeah, pretty good. All right. How does that sound? Does that sound better or worse? So go ahead and create an audio problem between you and your critics by creating distance. What? Anybody got some thoughts on this? I'm done talking. Oh my goodness. I see Missy, Catherine, Daisy, Janet. Here comes Missy. Hi, Missy.
I just gotta go faster. It makes me think of a lot of things. This is very good, especially the water analogy. That's great. I'm going to remember that in those moments.
Mm-hmm.
But first thing I thought of was Winston Churchill, because he said something like, you've got critics, good. That means you stood up for something. And you should certainly be able to stand up in your own mind for your own why. And I'm thinking of Napoleon Hill, who just about 100 years ago, maybe a little more, maybe 1913, 15, something like that, when his poor son was born, not poor son, when his son was born without ears or even the apparatus to reach the brain. Napoleon Hill's wife was against him. All the teachers were against him. The doctors were against him. He just kept persisting. My son will hear. And Mother Nature moved out of the way and bent to his burning desire. So if you succumb to criticism of others, whether they're bottom feeders or, maybe there are people above you who know better and you're willing to take some advice, but if you're going to be thrown off your course or blown off your course by critics, then I submit that your why isn't why enough. It's not purpose. You have to define your purpose more, because nothing can throw you off from your burning desire as long as it is good and right. And now Napoleon Hill's son, being born without ears, he was almost opposite the laws of physics. I mean, usually they say within the bounds of nature, because if you said you were going to have a baby, that's probably not going to work, because God only made certain things happen. But
well, I don't know. It's the present time, right? I mean, we've got aren't men pregnant now? I saw.
That's right. There's a Ken doll. There's a Ken doll that's pregnant. But it actually wasn't against the laws of nature. Something grew there. Mother Nature made a way for it to happen, and so that's a great example of why you must have a burning desire, not just a desire. You have to have a burning desire. Your why has to be in granite. And the critics, granite doesn't hear the critics. It may hurt you for a minute if it's a family member or a dear friend, but then you gotta be detached, like you say. Be detached. Okay, that's their opinion, and figure out where they are. Are they bottom feeders? Because as I'm changing, I'm realizing that my perceptions of people are changing. Oh, wait, that person's always been critical, just like I used to be. They're like me, My sister and I would spend whole days talking about all the rotten things that happened to us, but making it funny. And we would one-up each other. Oh, let me say what happened to me, And I'm not participating in those conversations so much. So I have to find a different way of communicating, but anyway, now I'm babbling again. But just if your why is strong enough, you will withstand the criticisms of the bottom feeders, certainly, the well-meaning, and sometimes your own criticism. You have to then get up higher, like you said, and look and say, wait a minute, is this the old me stepping back in here? Is this an old paradigm coming back at me? Because that's usually what's going to try to pull you under the water. So have your why be strong. Think of Winston Churchill and Napoleon Hill, and this meeting, come back to these wise words that John gave us and from all these people that we have read about, and stand your ground. And if you have critics, it's good, because you've stood for something, or you're doing something, or you're being something, and people don't like that because they're not being and doing. So that's my 2 cents for the day.
Yeah. Where no oxen are, the crib is clean. Right. So do something. You were mentioning Napoleon Hill's son, Blair, and the, unlikely, although successful event or process of getting him to hear stuff. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the quote right now, because there's 3 things that Napoleon Hill said he did that allowed this to occur. It says here, this is in the chapter on desire, by the way, right? Which is what you're talking about, burning desire. Right, Missy? But check out this paragraph. The modus operandi by which this astounding result was achieved is not hard to describe. It consisted of 3 very definite facts. First, I mixed faith with desire for normal hearing, which I passed on to my son. Second, I communicated my desire to him in every conceivable way available through a persistent, continuous effort over a period of years. Third, he believed me. So I suppose if you can convince me that it's not only desirable, but possible for me to have a baby, all right. Well, good luck on that one. Okay.
John Jr.'s on.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else? Actually, I can't have a baby. I'm past menopause. So there's that. Hi, Janet.
Well, thank you for making us laugh while you're trying to illuminate us.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of, one of my responses is, well, you need to know stuff, because when you know stuff, then you know that you know, and other people can't knock you about so much. If you're unsure that you know, you possibly are more open to people who don't know and you don't know, and you're all kind of muddling around.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of my thoughts. But I really like to know stuff. So But then there's Ibsen, who on the theory of color and color mixing, making colors, to do red and green, what do they make? And he taught at the Bauhaus School of Art. And he said that if your way is the way of unknowing, then do that. But if your way is the way of knowing, then do that. You might be going, you might be going from your intuition and trying this and that and seeing what works. That might be one path. The other path is to study the heck out of it, to experiment the heck out of it, to try everything you can, and then come from a place of knowing. So they're both valid, depending partially on your intuition and your pulse on how things work and stuff like that. Some people are very good at just and listening to themselves. I don't think you had that in the list of the 3 things, but when you listen to yourself and you get guidance, then you can, that's another way of going, right? Mm-hmm. So I think there are a lot of approaches and a lot of ways to go into something. And we've always said together that, you don't go out perfect, you go out as best you can, you learn along the way, you add to your knowledge, you know, of what works, what doesn't work. So those are all good things. And so, yes, the strong why, the desire, but you can desire the heck out of something. And I mean, you could desire to create a baby in you, John, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Right.
Maybe I'm just being the critic. So there,
there is such a thing as objective reality too, which if we didn't all agree on that, then we're in real trouble. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of people who have very much believed in their inventions, and sometimes they just aren't. Well, you brought up a thing months ago about, well, maybe there just isn't a market for that. It's not that it's not a valuable thing. Maybe nobody wants it. So there's a lot of views and aspects to what will fly and what won't. Mm-hmm. And I think that I think, criticism isn't necessarily bad unless you have a poor opinion of yourself. That's the Roosevelt quote, right? I mean, it's only when other people, but maybe I think people have, there's kernels of good thought in what people offer, even if they're offering it in a somewhat mean way. I mean, we don't want to be distracted by people who are just trying to knock us off, right. get us off our base. That's a whole different viewpoint, and sometimes the criticals are just trying to, what they're doing is reflecting their own insecurities. They don't see themselves ever able to do it, so they don't see you able to do it, especially if they knew you when you were 4. And didn't you as an adult and capable. But a lot of it's projection from other people. So weighing things, but I don't, maybe who I'm trying to reach are the bottom feeders. Maybe I'm trying to elevate them a little bit from my lofty viewpoint, and I need to listen to them. Maybe I'm trying to reach people who many are not trying to reach, but I have a viewpoint that I think can raise them up a little bit. So then I need to listen to them because they're part of who I'm trying to reach. So
you bring up a lot of points there, Janet. So there is use in heuristics, right? You're talking about trial and error versus academic, and then I'm going to apply what I already know. I don't know, therefore let me try this or that. So that's heuristics, right? But keep in mind, even heuristically speaking, there's other faculties besides, reason. There is such a thing as intuition. right? So, all knowledge that ever was already is. So you can tap into some of that as well. But on the whole idea of bringing up a bottom feeder, and this might be an incorrect, analogy, but back when I was younger, I lived in New Jersey, and there was a time when we went out deep sea fishing on boats, right out off the shore, going out like way out. Okay. And we were going for cod and pollock and sea bass. And there was another fish called a ling. It's known by other names as well. Does anybody know what a ling is?
Yeah.
So these are deep sea fish. Okay. And when we would hook up with ling, they're deep. Okay. And you get them up. By the time they get to the surface, their guts, stomach and whatever was out their mouth because of the, coming up from the pressure and to no pressure. Now you're coming up to the surface. Okay. Sorry for the graphic on that, but to pull up something that a bottom feeder, let's say, it would kill them. Is that a metaphor? I don't know. I don't know. But as you were talking, I'm sorry, Janet, but I was seeing a ling with its stomach sticking out of its mouth. So what are you going to do for the bottom feeder? I don't know. Maybe go for those mid-depth, convert those, right? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, it depends on what we are putting into our bottom feeder category.
Okay.
I think that, what you were saying was valid. I'm thinking, well, I don't know. I think it's kind of maybe a judgmental thing, which I try to steer clear of. Are we considering people who are ne'er-do-wells, don't do anything, whatever, but there's reasons why. There's things that you can lift people up. I'm thinking of a story right now of, so I live in Los Angeles most of the time. We have a lot of homeless here, unfortunately. And because it's warm, you don't freeze on the streets. You live homeless in Washington, DC, you're not going to survive the winter. But here you can. And there's a story about a man who met a man. And it turned out that this homeless person who was living on the streets was down on his luck. And he was actually a very gifted violinist. And this person befriended him, helped him, and he got back to what he did really well. But you wouldn't know it by just seeing him on the street.
We're not making a moral assessment or evaluation. But when we say bottom feeder, we're talking about people who are critical for the sake of criticism and who refuse to learn. So because I see where you're going with that, Janet. And so, yeah, I'm not talking about, somebody down on their luck or something. But, the interesting thing, though, is that, let me ask anybody here, okay, if you were down on your luck, how long would you stay down? Probably not long, right? You'd find
definitely not long.
Right. You'd find a way.
Yes.
Find a way.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think differently. Because there's a lot of reasons there's a lot of things that cause us to be down on our luck. Some of it is just our internal dialogues and our inabilities to see things in such a way that Linda has just offered. Not long. She wouldn't stay down long because her internal dialogues pop her back up again. But there's people who don't, or people who are their mental capacities just have them in
Janet, I mean, I understand where you're coming from too, but what point to what John was saying is like how you can't, I mean, we're not talking about criticism at that point. You're talking about helping people that are down on their luck, and that's a totally different thing. I mean, how I'm understanding it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll step out. Thank you, Linda. And I'll step
But
out.
no, it's just, it's like, and I've had experience with trying to help those that are down on their luck or just can't, they're just in a bad place and you can't help them if they don't want to be helped.
There it is.
And you know what? We're away from business now, John. So
Yeah.
I think I need to step back. Thank you, though.
No, great conversation. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Linda, as well. I think, well, Linda, you've captured the floor. Anything else you'd like to say, Linda?
No, not really. It's just
Well, we got Lynn and Catherine here. Catherine's got a hot mic, and I think I saw Lynn's hand. Hey, Catherine.
Yeah, I was just going to say this has been a great conversation. When you started off there talking about being an academic, I felt like I've been stuck in that stage now for probably about 15 years since I started homeschooling my kids.
Mhm.
But, then I got sick. And so I never learned to act on it, which is what I'm trying to do now, or what I am learning to do now. I'm not trying, I am learning to do it. So yeah, thanks, Janet, there. Need the thumbs up. But yeah, it's a process. And it does take a long time, but you do have to reach down and help people. I mean, there was a point where I was definitely down on my luck. I was homeless as a single mom for about 2.5 weeks. I was moving back from out of state, and I stayed with friends and a couple nights slept in my car with my son because I was waiting for my first paycheck so I could get into a place. But I was determined even then, I was not going to stay down. It was just not going to happen.
Beautiful.
So, visualize what you want. Oh, and on that subject too, no one should rule out the idea of a John Jr. because in another, 10, 15 years, it's entirely possible that Trinity could name her first son John Jr. So there you go.
Oh,
Don't
boy.
rule it out.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be a junior though, because she would be married to somebody who isn't named Lavenia. So,
Well, it could be a second then, John the second.
oh,
I mean, they used to do that with royalty all the time.
royal
so-
lineage, like
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
got it. Thank you,
Don't rule it
Catherine.
out. It's possible.
All right. Where's Lynn? Where is she? Let's get Lynn out here for final thoughts.
Yeah, it was just about how long you'd stay down if things fell over. And I guess I was just going to say it probably depends on the assets that you've got before they fall over. I had a house which I had to sell, and I thought we were going to have to camp in the car under a bridge for a while, and I discovered that we could dog sit in people's houses. And I'm back on top now, but it's like you can go an awful long way. Because I had a house to sell, I was able to buy another one, but that whole interim process of while it was selling, I had no spare money I was working full time, but I had no money. And it's given me a hell of a lot of sympathy now when you see people standing around with placards, saying donate. I always have a few dollars to just sort of hand over to people. It's like, I don't care if they're going to go buy drugs. It's their choice. Some of them I know are not. And it really moves you into a different way of looking, because I mean, it could have been that close. But yeah, if I hadn't had a house to sell, we'd have been in a car under a bridge.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, again, we're talking about critics, not people who have had difficulties. I tell you what, the whole being critical, if that was like my life's purpose, well, that would be difficult, right? So I think we're talking about very different realities here, from the person who thinks they already know and just asserts their rightness and your wrongness, versus however this other category of non-production came up, right? Both are not productive. Okay, but one's by choice, and the other one we could say is by choice. But back to my question, how long would you stay down? I think that's the one that's rather subjective. As I think Janet was saying, what's in Linda's mind is resourcefulness, right? Lynn, obviously resourcefulness. Okay. So anyway, interesting conversation today. Lindsay, you want to have the final word?
Yeah. When the critics start up, I don't know if you're swimming in the North Atlantic, back to the water, what did they put it? They lather themselves in, I don't know, it looks like Crisco. So the cold water don't get to them, but it don't freeze them, and just keep on swimming. Swim right by them and keep going. Because somebody's always going to try to bring you down, and just keep going.
So the answer then, here's the punchline, everyone. Lindsay just enlightened us, is lather yourself up with Vaseline and Crisco.
Whatever it is. I mean, I don't know. I've never been to the North Atlantic. Okay?
That's awesome.
I'm a warm weather person. And it's probably not menopause, John. It probably just Florida weather.
Very good. Very good.
But, I don't know. Yeah, because most people don't think. And friends and family can be the worst. So you just gotta.
Because they knew you when you were 4 or when you were in diapers, and they can't envision you being beyond that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not where you fit into the herd.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. What a great, interesting talk today. All because of Lynn. Right? That's it. It's none of your business what people's opinions of you. Thank you, Lynn. All right. We'll be back here tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, 2 more chapters of Proctor as You Were Born.